silver is so cheap relative to gold, investors are going to want to buy silver. I know that's the case now. Right now, the premiums at coin stores and bullion stores are something like $7, $6 over spot.
Yep.
If you can buy it.
Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics in a wild time in the financial markets, and fortunate to be joined by a good friend of mine, Bill Murphy of GATA and La Metropole Cafe, who's going to dig into some of the wild action we've seen in the metals, both gold and silver, the stock market. I don't know, maybe you've solved coronavirus too. Who knows? Is there anything Bill can't do? But it's a pleasure to have you here, especially Bill, because we have begun the Big Silver Short Countdown. That's the book that I am releasing, which you were a part of, which I'm quite grateful for. And I think folks will certainly appreciate as in these trying times in gold and silver. So great to have you on here again today. And how is everything going, sir?
Thank you, Chris. Good to be here. What can I say? I'm disgusted. They closed my gym down, so I'm not a happy camper.
Well, I as soon as I woke up and saw silver was down, I was thinking, geez, I should have gotten him earlier in the day. Why don't we just start with a quick recap? I mean, a lot has happened in the past week. In particular, maybe to dig into, we had $1.5 trillion out of the Fed on Thursday. By Friday, that wasn't enough. They had to accelerate their treasury purchases. Sunday night, we got an announcement, which I think in history will be looked back on similarly to Nixon taking us off the gold standard. So any thoughts on the wild things we've seen recently?
Yeah, where's all this money coming from? Gold is probably going to minimum 2,000 quickly and then 3,000, I think. Silver is the worst acting market in the history of the world, thanks to J.P. Morgan. Once they're finish wiping everybody out in the futures arena, the silver market will go nuts. You've got a ratio of 125 to 1. It's absolutely absurd. So there's much excitement coming, and that's what the shares are telling us yesterday and today. They're up pretty good, and it is really wild. And again, where's the money going to come from? It's needed. Don't get me wrong for people, but what does it mean? It's just all debasement, and you're going to have the gold and silver prices go nuts. And the only reason they're down where they are now is because of the gold cartel and what they do to rig the prices, which, I've been trying to expose with my colleague Chris Powell now for 21 years.
Yeah, and speaking of which, you mentioned how money is seemingly coming from nowhere. Yesterday, we were hearing about a $50 billion bailout package for the airlines. I think I saw a headline somewhere this morning. Trump was looking for an $850 billion stimulus package, which, gee, it sure seems like those monetary spigots have opened up awfully quickly.
Well, you're absolutely right. And it's just common sense, what's coming here. And the only reason, as I mentioned, that gold and silver are sharply higher now is because of the gold cartel and J.P. Morgan. And in my opinion, I've been saying this, writing it now, actually before the coronavirus, that the gold cartel is blown up, meaning they don't have the physical gold anymore to meet demand. This was before the coronavirus. That's why the gold was making its move and recently hit 1,700. And they just don't have it. And what they're doing now is sort of a last gasp in the futures market to try to get the price down. But they're going to be overwhelmed, and you're going to see gold goes nuts. And then silver is so cheap relative to gold, investors are going to want to buy silver. I know that's the case now. Right now, the premiums at coin stores and bullion stores are something like $7, $6 over spot. Yep. If you can buy it, I mean, silver's just going to go nuts, and it's going to go from the worst investment in history to the best.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, Bill, because here we have the silver chart pulled up. You can see it is down again today, and I don't know if you had told me we were going to see silver with a 12 in front of the price, I don't know if I'd have been able to believe that. Although it's interesting, we've heard people talk for years about the paper market and the physical market decoupling, and so far we've not had the stock markets close I think that did actually happen for a couple of days after September 11th, and people have been rumoring that it could be closed, which is interesting because should the COMEX be closed and you actually want silver and there's no COMEX trading with these premiums that you've mentioned right now, in fact, if you have physical silver, your price actually is higher. So it seems like the degree to which we're seeing a decoupling already.
Absolutely. I mean, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. I mean, and it's going to get much more so as the weeks go by.
Yep. Well, that'll be interesting to keep an eye on. Another thing I was curious to check in with you about, we see here silver's down 42 cents, which I was a little surprised a couple minutes ago. I see gold is up $18. Actually, gold has really rallied. You see down here, it looks like it was about 1470-ish and got as high as 1540. And we've seen some odd divergences on, for years, these are always trading together. And then we see something like this today, which seems a little strange to me. And also yesterday when silver was down 10%, we saw the silver miners were up, about 10% each, which didn't quite make sense to me. So what do you think is happening? Why are we seeing these divergences? Is there something going on that is happening beneath the surface?
Well, that's usually the case. They wiped out the shares last week. I mean, if you look at the charts, I mean, it's just like a waterfall. Got everybody out in a panic with the stock market and so on. Now they know what's coming in the gold, silver markets. We're talking about the biggest moves in history. So the people behind the scenes are buying up all the shares, everything they can. They know what the gold and silver shares are going to do in the weeks and months ahead. It's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah, I've heard someone mention that before, because obviously you would think, all right, if you have silver miner X here, the price of silver goes up. Well, what they're selling their product for is now higher, so it makes sense the stock goes up. Absent any company news, if silver goes down, would make sense the stock goes lower. Although I've talked to people who found that while that seems logical, for whatever reason, it often does seem like the shares lead the way. So similar to how we saw the price of silver get pummeled and there are the reports of JP Morgan buying a lot of physical, is that what you think is happening here, where the price was hammered and you think the same folks who hammered the price of bullion were in there yesterday and today loading up on shares?
Yeah, well, first of all, the Justice Department called JP Morgan a criminal enterprise, and that's what they are. I've been talking about this year after year after year. All they've done is rig the silver market, and now the open interest, which went up to 245,000, is now down to about 165,000. They're getting out of their short positions after they've cleaned everybody out. Whether they have the physical silver or not, I don't know. All I know is they're as corrupt as can be. And once they get finished in the futures market like they are now, you'll see the futures go bananas to the upside.
Yeah, and speaking of which, you mentioned the Department of Justice in there. I wonder if that's something anyone in the agency is considering, that we have the price of silver dropping almost $1 or $2 by the day, while we have a physical shortage of metal now, very similar to what happened in 2008, I might add. Bullion, the premiums are higher. Some shops, you can't even get physical metal. Little strange, don't you think?
To put it mildly. But it honestly, it says what's going to come. Again, silver is so cheap, 125 to 1 relative to gold. The whole world is going to want to buy silver. I mean, at 12, 13, 14, 15, even $20, you're going to have a panic. And what silver is left in terms of bigger buyers and the industry will be cleaned out fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because obviously we've already had that fragile supply chain where no one can really figure out where the metal is coming from. And now we've seen not just one or two dealers, but around the globe, see sales pick up significantly, U.S. Mint offline. And what I'm guessing we'll just probably never get a comment from the CFTC or the Department of Justice. But I mean, it does it's like you almost wonder what they would say. Hey, why is the future price dropping when there's no metal? What possible explanation could they have?
That's why they don't say anything, because it's all about the big money and power in the world doing it behind the scenes, and they're not going to touch him with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, it does seem that way. Although, any thoughts on the ongoing case, which at least it's about a year and a half since John Edmonds was arrested. I'm assuming they didn't get his confession on the first day, so probably been ongoing for about 2 years. Perhaps we just witnessed in the past couple of weeks one of the most blatant criminal operations in gold and silver since this has been going on. Any thoughts? Do you hold out any hope there? Do you think they'll do it, or is that just strictly for show?
I could care less. Oofing. I mean, compare what the real rigging about is in gold and silver and the prices and what they've done. They take some trader and throw them, out to the wolves. I really don't care. And all the other suits, which are so important, they never go anywhere. They just drag on and on and on. It's disgusting.
Yeah, it's hard to have much faith in what they're doing. But do you think we'll get to that point where someone shows up asking for their metal and is just not there, and that's what sparks a bigger move? Or what finally breaks this? Because I agree with what you're saying now. We've seen these data points that indicate the supply is running low, yet I know a lot of folks are sitting there this week saying, well, geez, if this didn't break the control of it, what is it going to take?
Oh, I can't stress this enough. The bad guys, the gold cartel, is running out or run out of physical gold. They're doing all kinds of shenanigans, exchange for physicals, doing this, doing that, changing this. They don't have it. That's why they went after the futures market. They're getting overrun by demand, and that was becoming apparent. Now we've had all this chaos. That's why the gold price keeps doing what it is, and it's going to go nuts fairly shortly because they're cleaned out. As I call it, the gold cartel is blown up. It's just a matter of days or weeks, maybe months, before it becomes apparent to the world. And that's when the scandal becomes a big deal, when the gold price goes nuts and said, how come this has happened all of a sudden? Yep. Hello, I raised my hand.
Well, if folks want to go make a contribution to GATA.org, since you've been warning them about it for, we're about 2 decades in now, right, Bill?
Yes, sir.
So, I think certainly it's unfortunate the way these markets are run, where you have SEC, DOJ, CFTC that are supposed to be policing the markets, say they are, yet perhaps the most blatant example was Bernie Madoff, where they had all the evidence and then just sat there. And by the way, who was Bernie Madoff's sole banker?
I mean, JP Morgan?
Yeah, I mean, and which I understand is pretty unusual to have only one banker for a setup like that, because there's usually a syndicate. But JP Morgan was their only banker.
Well, that's a syndicate all in one.
So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. One thing you mentioned earlier, where you keep an eye, and you do this in your columns at lemetropolecafe.com, where you look a lot at the open interest. And something I've been wondering, maybe you could describe how you distinguish between the two, with the open interest versus the bank short or long position, usually short in these markets, is in terms of like getting an idea of how much paper is being thrown at it. I mean, they're both measures of that, but maybe if you could walk through how you look at them and whether you value one more than the other, just how folks can put that in perspective.
Well, take silver, for example. Open interest was 135,000 contracts. That's the long and short positions on the COMEX, when silver went from 15, 16 to 50 in 2011, all the way up to the very end. The past few years, it's been 210,000, 200,000, 245,000, meaning the JP Morgan and the shorts to rig the price to keep it down, selling in the paper market. Now that open interest is coming way down as they cover their positions and rip off the speculative longs, which they just did, and silver went from 17, 18 down to 12. So it's about ending, and I don't know what will happen as we move up again, but I wouldn't be surprised if J.P. Morgan, who has won for 9 years in a row, just doesn't let it go again and say they made their fortune, so what? And you know, they can't do anything about the gold price because the physical supply is gone. They're probably going to reset the prices. People talk about that, but gold and silver are going to go bonkers to the upside.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned the price reset because by all means, I don't have information to confirm when is coming yet. As I've thought about what might happen if there were a gold reset before that happened, you'd sure think that some of these conditions would be along those lines. And perhaps the last one to wrap up with here, we saw what was really stunning to me. We saw what the Fed did. It's almost like by the day trying a new move, and it's like, oh, we'll toss $1 trillion here. If it doesn't work, we'll toss $3 trillion out on Thursday. But especially to see how Sunday night the Fed did their play, and then the market just got destroyed yesterday. You think we're reaching the point where the Fed is kind of making itself irrelevant? Because if it's using its big bazooka and just getting laughed at, I'm wondering if we've crossed the point of no return for the Fed. Maybe we crossed that a couple decades ago, but in a new level this week, do you think?
Well, I'm not so sure. All I know is nothing's happening. You can't go to the dentist. You can't go to a restaurant. I can't go to my gym. What can you do to create economic activity for people? It's all gone, at least for now. So you got to think the stock market, outside of the plunge protection team goosing up, what's it doing up here? I mean, it's up today when I last checked 500. I mean, everything's stopping. Can't travel.
Well, it's not ideal, although for one good way to create some economic activity is because the link is right there below for Le Metropole Cafe, where Bill has been keeping us updated. Geez, how many years has that been that you've been doing Le Metropole
Oh,
Cafe?
September of 1998 when long-term capital management blew up, right before that. And I'll be here, but I don't know what the heck I'm going to do if they close down the COMEX.
Yeah, although you were warning about what was happening when Hank Paulson and Ben Bernanke were saying subprime was contained and all the other things that Wall Street missed. So, folks, check out that link, Le Metropole Cafe, and also Bill with his partner, Chris Powell at GATA, that actually does a lot of this research for free and always is grateful for donations that people can make there. And Bill, did you look like you had a final thought there? Man?
Yeah, I want to salute my buddy Chris Powell because he does such a great job. He's an incredible guy, and I love him to death. And what he does at GATA.org, and he's just a very special person, and we've got to become close friends in 20 years, and I just want to salute him.
Well, Chris is a good guy. It was really a pleasure to meet both of you in person last year in New Orleans at Brian London's New Orleans Investment Conference, which hopefully we'll be able to go to if the quarantine is done by then. Yeah. So, Bill, I appreciate that. I appreciate all your insight, and hopefully the wait won't be too much longer, but we'll see how it goes. And folks, if you're watching at home, hit the subscribe button. And if you found this helpful, there's another video coming your way that explains it even more.